Hello and welcome back to our weekly Trek Central live stream. I am, as always, your host, Brie. We are joined by co-host Dom and our lovely guest, Alex Perry. Dom,
Hey,
do you want to...
everybody.
Actually...
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
Oh,
Hello.
sorry. No, I'm not calling you out. I was going to say, did you want to just introduce yourself? But then I was going to say, no, we might as well let Alex introduce himself. He's the guest.
Yes. That way.
He's
yes.
got a lot... Other way. You were right the first time.
Oh, that way. Okay.
I know everything's backwards today.
Yeah.
Yeah, hey everybody, thank you so much for the opportunity to join you. My name's Alex Perry. I'm a contributor for TrekCore.com. I'm also the host of the Weekly Trek podcast, which you can find on all good podcast platforms. My guest 3 or 4 episodes ago was Mr. Don Paris himself. And you can find that, under Weekly Trek with the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. You can find the show on Twitter at Weekly Trek. You can find me on Twitter at Alexander T. Perry. I love talking Star Trek. It's pretty much all that I do. So really thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me for such a huge episode discussion.
Yes.
It was great.
Yeah. It was definitely you can definitely call it a finale of Lower Decks. It put out this season in style, and I don't think I would say it went over last episode of Wedge Dodge because I really love that episode. That was my
favorite episode
but
so far.
This was probably be my second favorite of this season. So it's great to have you here to talk about it, and I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on it. Let's just ask you first and foremost, what was your favorite part of this episode?
I loved everything about it, in the sense that I was a little nervous going into this episode because the season 1 finale is so good, right? No Small Parts is, again, I think, right, like episode 8, 9, and 10 of season 1. You're not wrong putting any of those episodes as your number 1 episode of the season, right? Here again for season 2, for me, I think First Contact just ever so slightly pips Wedge Dooge for the number 1 spot. But, right, like, you're not wrong by picking either 9, 10, and so I was a little bit nervous going into it because I was like, well, how can they top last season, right? Like, what a terrific way to end the season. And not only did they manage it, it feels like they sort of took it the next step beyond, right? Where I think to answer your question, what was my favorite part of the episode? My favorite part of the episode was the fact that, unlike the first season finale where the Cerritos was the victim that had to be saved by somebody else, I really loved that the season 2 finale, the Cerritos was the hero that was doing the saving. And that whole kind of sequence of the whole sort of theme of the episode of everybody working together, right? I mean, most obviously the moment they all go out on the outside of the ship and start ripping off the whole place was just what an incredible idea and what an incredible sequence.
And such a unique solution that we haven't seen before in Trek. So it's like really cool that it wasn't just like, oh yeah, technobabble stuff. It's like, oh, this is actually kind of cool.
Yeah,
I didn't think they could do that.
It gave me a whole nother layer to how I think about starships now.
Yeah, it was so good. It was so fun, and it was a nice sort of culmination of a lot of the little story beats that there'd been throughout the season, right? Like, Lower Decks is an episodic show. There's no doubt it's an episodic show, but there are also these really interesting themes that run throughout the season that get culminated in this episode, right? The Packard storyline obviously is, sort of appeared in 4 or 5 episodes so far this season and got another evolution in this episode. So I mean, I come back to where I started. I loved everything about this episode.
Yes, and Brie, what were your favorite parts of this episode? Well, even if you can't top that excellent monologue you just had there.
No, I have to agree with Alex that one of my favorite sequences was also the coming in and the mirroring of being the victim ship in the first season and then coming in and saving in the second one. But one of the moments that was my favorite was actually when Jennifer saved Mariner. Because when I saw the hand, I thought it was going to be Mariner's mother, Captain Freeman. And so I was like, oh, I expected that. But when it was Jennifer, I was like, oh my gosh, no way. Like, I got so excited. It was, like, so emotional. And then, like, that little relationship, I know they've already mentioned what they're doing for the next season with them, and I'm extremely excited. But just, like, that nice little development in character that happened in this season, it was like a nice culmination to what felt like the end of a starting arc for like this character that just started off as a joke at first and now is a fleshed out character, and
the fact that Jennifer came about because of Tony Newsom's just ad-libbing randomly pushing people and being like, oh, why didn't you tell me it was an Andorian? I would have said like not Jennifer. But now we've got so many people who were like attached to Jennifer before this episode, being like, oh, Jennifer's always like being mean to Mariner and all that stuff. And then you get the culmination of that and you see the flip that people have towards this character, which I think is really good writing. So yeah, it was just amazing.
And such an interesting way of balancing the sort of traditional Star Trek, right? Like, we know from the Berman era of Star Trek, the actors were instructed never to change any of the lines. And if they wanted to make a change to any of the lines on the page, it was a whole hour-long process of the set calling up to the writer's room, getting the approval, and so it was just not done. And like the Lower Decks philosophy is really different, right? Because from hearing them talk about the way they record the dialogue for this show, it'll be like, they'll have the line and the actor will say the line and then they'll be like, give me another flavor of it, and they'll do something slightly different, and give me another one, and they'll do something slightly different, and eventually they'll kind of cobble together the script of all the best possible takes. And like the Jennifer character comes out of one of those, just like, give me something a bit different, right? Just like, let's just go wild, see where you want to go and do what you want to do. And now we have this really great potential relationship, right, which Mike McMahon has sort of said is going to continue into season 3, and gives Lower Decks a additional depth in its representation, right? Because I think by the time we got to the end of season 1, there was not a lot of criticism, but I think in terms of like things people were disappointed about from the first season was maybe not getting that level of LGBTQIA representation in the first season, and now I think that was definitely something they took very to heart for season 2, and looks like will only continue to expand now into season 3, which is terrific.
Yes.
And I just want to say, still staying on Jennifer, I really liked that Jennifer's EVA suit had the little antennae spots in it, which is just like, it's really cool, but also, does she have to go and find the Andorian one? How does that work?
Yep.
Or does it like adjust, like...
Yeah.
So Michael actually brought up a point. This is another part that I recognized. He said that when Billups curses by saying dragon's blood, that was a nice callback to the origin story. I also caught that, and I thought that was so nice.
Yes.
Because I was like, oh, Billups. Like, I love him. I love Jennifer. I think they both had a really good bit of development in their story over such a short period of time, and I really like that.
Yeah, and giving these more like minor characters just a little bit of fleshing out.
Yeah.
And like we can pick out people in the audience when there's like a big crew scene, and you're like, oh, it's the Kazinti guy, and he has a good posture, and all this stuff.
I think that's,
and it just makes you love these characters.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest complaints. I think, and I don't even want to call it a complaint. It's just the way of everything outside of animating is. You see all these background characters in Star Trek, and you, for the most part, will never see them again. They're one-off characters, came on the set for a day, did some background stuff, and then they're gone. So you don't get that same bit of, unless they get hired, and then it comes into, you got to negotiate contracts and stuff if they've got like a certain. So then it becomes like this whole nother layer. But with animating, because voice actors can do several different lines, you can always bring in new characters and always just give your already talented voice actors another thing to do. Maybe expand their talent a little further and get another character in, and
especially if a background character is like doing something silly in like the first season or in an earlier episode, and then being like, oh, we can do something with that, and be like, okay, he's the person who always presses the button in a weird way or whatever. And with voice actors, you know, you can have multiple people.
Right.
You can have a voice actor voicing multiple people.
it's
Like we
like
have Phil
Talin.
Lamar doing many characters.
Yeah, and like
this
Talin's voice
season.
actress was one of the background actors in like in the red shirt group. She was the
Oh,
girl. She
um,
the like the I think she was just a human girl. And she only had like one line.
I'm trying to think. What's her name? Like
It was
Cortez or
something.
something like that.
Yeah, but
Um,
you know,
but yeah,
she just had like one or two lines in that episode, and then she came in as Talin, and everyone loved Talin. And that's the thing with voice
yes,
acting is like one of your characters might just be like a one-off character, but you might have another one that comes in and oh, you know, everyone loves it, or the producers love it, or you know, it fits well with the story, and it's really easy to keep that person on because you're already on the payroll. So animating, it makes it a lot easier, and that's one of the reasons I've always liked voice acting so much, is like it's always a lot easier to do more and get more opportunities, because you know there's like a whole nother step with stage production or movie production that is like a whole nother level. So I think it gives Trek a huge opportunity to really develop background characters that we wouldn't normally see, and that's so cool to me.
And the ship just feels so much more authentic and lived in as a result, right? Like, like even the character of, like, I think lots of people are calling him Towel Guy, right? We don't know his name. He's just the guy wrapped in a towel who shows
literally.
up in, like in the background of a bunch of different episodes.
Although we got a new Towel Guy this
Yeah.
episode.
We did get a new Towel Guy,
We got
yeah.
a merp. Well, we know that one of their species is called merp.
Yes.
So we call them merp species. Yeah, a new merps guy, and he's pretty buff. But yeah, a new Towel Guy. And then we got a Towel Guy on the Klingon ship last episode as well. And just all these small background characters which you just can't help but fall in love with.
But here's the craziest thing about it, right? Which is, think about how much screen time this show has gotten so far, right? 20 episodes of about 24 minutes apiece. Compare that to like your average season of the 90s Trek, right? They're probably only at about 10 full complete episodes of Star Trek in terms of runtime. And think about how you feel about these characters today versus how you thought about them at the beginning of episode 1, and then compare how you think about Picard by the time you get to episode 13 of season 1 of The Next Generation, and Riker and Troy and Data and Crusher and Yar, versus how you felt in Encounter at Farpoint. I mean, it really is a testament to the way in which this show has not wasted a single moment of story time to both show us really cool Star Trek stories, but also do this really impressive character development work that's gotten us to this point where, like, you can hit a cliffhanger right at the end of this second season, and it's something we really care about and are bummed that we have to wait probably almost a year to get the resolution of, where by the time of midway through the first season of The Next Generation, like, they're still a season and a half away, charitably, from finding their feet in terms of what they want to do with that show. Same with Deep Space Nine, same with Voyager, same with Enterprise. And so, it's a really terrific achievement. And it's one that I don't think we think about enough, because we just think about it as being 2 seasons. But, like, it's a lot of story in a short amount of show.
And also they fit so much story into these episodes, with some of them sometimes even having like 4 plot lines, which can bog down those episodes, but still having like 3 plot lines in a single episode. So this one was the 3 separate, well, I'm guessing 3, but Tendi and Rutherford going on a journey around the place, the whole bridge, well, the whole crew taking off the panels, and then Boimler and Mariner doing their thing. So it's essentially 3 plot lines, and to have them so distinct and well written in 24 minutes is such a testament to those writers.
While also giving time to the Archimedes and Captain Gomez, and giving moments for, Licia Naff to come back and kind of show the true Lower Decker journey from Samaritan Snare all the way through First Contact. I mean, like, that's another 3-4 minutes worth of time that's not spent on the Cerritos. And so the amount of kind of really great stuff that there is in just 18 minutes of the episode for our main characters is really terrific.
Yeah, and also just going on to the Sonia Gomez and Lucia Naff, the fact that she went from an ensign to a captain of a really beautiful ship in 16 years, I think.
I really liked that.
Is really cool.
Yeah.
And I was expecting she's going to do a like hot chocolate joke or something. But I really liked the reference when the ensign fell down and Sonia was like, oh yeah, I've done way worse things to way bigger people. Don't worry about it. I liked that as a reference because if you don't know that she spilled hot chocolate on Picard, you're just like, oh, she's being nice to the ensign. But knowing that, it just enhances it. And you're like, oh my God, she came so far.
And I would like to believe that I'm a big enough person to like just enjoy a great story and great characters, and that be the only thing I use to kind of determine whether an episode of Star Trek is good or not. But I'm a weak man, and I love me a good 24th century Starfleet ship design. And boy, was this episode serving up the looks in that regard, right? The Archimedes, the Oberth class, there's a Nova class. And Lower Decks as a whole has done that, right? It's not the first time there's been new ship designs, the Parliament class, the California class itself. It's amazing.
Yeah, and having the exposed California class this episode, and I guess you could say we had a little bit of foreshadowing of that with the model that Tendi and Rutherford were making with the orange like undercoat.
Yep.
So it was really nice, and I actually do want a model of the naked Cerritos, which I don't think would have been a word I would have expected coming out of my mouth at the beginning of this show.
Give me the naked Cerritos.
But we've got a lot of naked time this season, so
I'll
give it to the ship as well. But yeah, we've talked a lot about how we've loved parts about this episode, but was there anything in this episode which didn't particularly work for you, or was it all just great Trek?
I'm going to say there wasn't any... Oh, sorry, go.
No, please, go for it, Brie.
Oh, I was just going to say there wasn't really anything I didn't necessarily like. I know there's one other thing that I want to say is one of my favorite things, but I was saving it for like a discussion in itself. So that's why I haven't mentioned it yet. But off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything that would strike me as a negative straight off.
Yeah, I would say the lightest possible nitpick, right? Which is just like, I'm really straining for something here, was I did see a couple of people say that it was somewhat obvious that Lucia Naff had not acted in some time, and that this was her first voice acting role. But I thought she did a nice job with it. Yes, some of the lines were a little probably over enunciated to the point of like losing some of the emotion behind them. But that's, a consequence of the fact that she's not really a working actress anymore. She mostly works on charity projects and is a community organizer. And so, no kind of knock on that. And I would rather them have gotten her back to voice the role than find some voice actress who could do a Q Who era Gomez impression, right? So yeah, as I say, just the lightest of potential nitpicks, but like if that's the level of criticism that the episode is facing, I think they did all right by us.
Brie, was there anything from you?
There is. What that I dislike, or
yes,
I can't really think of any. I still
can't. Okay. I guess I'll go because there's
yours?
Only one thing in this episode, so it's not a big thing. But I feel that the Tendi storyline was a little bit convoluted and forced.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because I don't know why Dr. Ta'ana would delete her file from medical, because surely Tendi doesn't have to accept that position, so could stay in medical. So it was just kind of like, oh, okay. It was just a way to get Tendi and Rutherford to go around the ship and be like, oh, this is where we did that thing in the first episode and stuff like that. But that's really the only thing I have to criticize for this episode, apart from maybe there's so many people with T in their surname in the medical bay that that's kind of ridiculous, and it completely unimmersed me and everything. Yeah. Yeah.
That is a fair point. And the line that Ta'ana says, which has an expletive in it, the way it's phrased, right, like, is very much to get the audience and the character to think, oh, she's being bounced. But then when you think about it in the context of hearing it at the end of, no, actually, it's because you're too good for being in sickbay, right? I want to put you on this science track. It doesn't quite match up, but hey, I mean, I'm fine with a good contrivance anytime it, helps to push the story along and puts characters in interesting situations. And I think
if the only negative is a contrivance, then that speaks a lot about the positives of this episode. So
right, so we managed to go 23 minutes and neither of us has said the word cetacean ops yet.
Well, because I was just about to say, are we going to...
Oh, wait, that way.
Yeah, I was actually just about to say, are we going to talk about the whale in the room was going to be my my transition for that one. But yes, we can talk about the whale in the rooms. The whale's in the room now, or the whale's in the ship.
Not dolphins, beluga whales.
Yes.
Very horny whales.
Very, which I thought was a hilarious reference to like the way dolphins and some other whales do behave in the wild. I did think that was a funny
real life
callback.
Dolphins are extremely
really
horny,
freaking weird. Dolphins are strange. And we have so many bottlenose dolphins in Florida. Like, it's one of their primary locations. So like you'll go fishing and you just see them, hear them all the time. You go swimming, you can hear them underwater. Like, they're around. They are everywhere.
Well, hopefully no one's fishing in cetacean ops.
I hope not.
But there's beach balls and buckets on the side of cetacean ops. So, and we did get a sentence earlier from Ensign Barnes in the season being like, oh, me and some of the girls are going to hang out in cetacean ops. So it does seem to be a recreational area as well. Nice little swim. So yeah, can't blame them.
I loved it. I thought it was so nice. I liked that they teased it for a while and kept saying like, oh yeah, you might see it. And now we finally see it. I hope we see more. I want more cetacean ops. Never enough cetacean ops.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other show that would ever be in a position to deliver on that concept in a way that was quite as delightful as Lower Decks did, right? I mean, this is an idea that's been around since The Next Generation on the schematics for the Enterprise D that Rick Sternbach put together. You've got cetacean ops, and there's one line in one episode in which Geordi says to one of the characters, oh, have you seen the dolphins? And if one of the corridor pieces that they have, the door says cetacean ops, and that's been it for for over 30 years now. That has been our exposure to cetacean ops, and then we just started getting a couple of little references in Lower Decks, and I think people were in a will they won't they situation earlier in the season, because there was an interview with Mike McMahon where he was asked is it on the cards to see cetacean ops, and he kind of deflected and said he didn't think so, because it was the kind of thing where once you show it can maybe never quite. Yeah, right, exactly. It is best being that thing you imagine rather than the thing that you see. But I will say, now being the thing that I have seen, I'm pretty impressed with it. And I thought that, it was very clever. It was funny the way that they approached it. The horny beluga whales, terrific idea. So I was a huge fan. It was another really nice payoff moment where if you've been a Star Trek fan for for a long time, and you've watched everything and you've immersed yourself in all the minutiae about these shows, and you own a copy of the Enterprise D schematics, and obviously you don't have to be those things in order to like Lower Decks, in order to think it's funny and think it's a great time. But if you have done all those things, there's just this extra level of delicious appreciation for this show that lives on top of just it being a great Star Trek show, that is just so fulfilling and so rewarding for those fans who, like me, just live with their head in the clouds, or not within the clouds, but on the Enterprise D.
Yeah, and I definitely really liked the comedic stuff with Station Ops, with one being called Matt. You wouldn't expect that's a very whale name though what is a really whale name? Who knows? We have a Andorian called Jennifer, so we can't really complain. But and then also the joke with the command consoles not being built for flippers.
Right.
But it's in Cetacean
Yeah,
Ops,
it's like,
and
why
it's just,
wouldn't they make it
it's
for
very
flippers?
much a engineer made it, not
Oversight,
thinking
yeah.
about what's it going to be used for. They were just
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, let's just use these consoles. But what was really nice about those consoles is that they're the very same ones from First Contact, which they use to disconnect the deflector dish, where you have to spin the thing, which was a nice little touch.
Complete with that, like, that really nice, like, shunk shunk noise that you got from the movie too. Like, when I heard that, I was like, oh yeah, that's like Star Trek ASMR right there.
Yeah, especially when they're in their like magnet boots and they're just walking on the hull, and just that mixture of sounds was so good.
It was very Trek.
Yes.
So, one more big conversation in the room. What did you guys think of the ending?
Oh, Alex, I'll let you go first because I have
No, please,
thoughts.
Dom, you go for it.
Oh, but I have so much thoughts. Obviously, as like, it felt very much. I expect what it would have felt like when like Best of Both Worlds came out.
That's
Probably
kinda what
not
I was,
on that extent of
they were
the
doing
main
a play on
character
that.
has become assimilated, but you know the captain of the ship has been forcibly taken off, and you don't know what's going to happen, and it could very much be in Lower Decks fashion that, oh yeah, Freeman's not going to be back. I wouldn't put that past them. I do think that Freeman will be back in some way or another. But having to wait the better part of a year now to get the payoff to that episode is going to be very satisfying. And also, I do appreciate it that it still might be a classic two-parter in that we'll have this episode and then we'll have a very continuing episode, but then we would have to call this episode First Contact Part 1, and that is quite a mouthful of numbers, so who knows. But there are some other things, but I'll let Alex go now and talk about the ending.
Yeah, I really liked it. I think coming out of season 1, there were changes that stuck and changes that didn't stick, right? Like Boimler going to the Titan, Shaxx dying, didn't stick. But some of the like character pieces, Rutherford losing his memories, that stuck. The sort of deepened relationship between Mariner and her mother, that stuck. And I think the same thing is happening here. I think there are parts of the ending that will stick, and there are parts that won't stick. The ones that will stick, I think, are things like, you know, Mike McMahon has when he's talked about season 3, he's talked about how he really wants to kind of start having season 3 push the show and the characters forward to whatever the next stage is for those characters. And I think so, like Tendi being placed on the senior science officer track, right? That's gonna stick. Boimler being more confident and ready to, you know, not just scream the whole time. I think that's gonna stick. Freeman getting arrested, that's Worf leaving the ship at the end of Redemption Part 1, right?
Yeah.
We all know he's coming back in Part 2. There's no way he's resigning Starfleet and this is Michael Dorn's last episode. There's no way Dawn Lewis is going... That Dawn Lewis as Captain Freeman is going to jail. But I'm so excited to see how that plays out, what they have lined up in terms of, you know, what First Contact Part 2 will look like. And yeah, you know, Best of Both Worlds, at least there was only 3 months to wait between Part 1 and Part 2.
Yes.
I think we probably have the better part of a year probably to wait for the
So
resolution.
maybe
of this
even
one.
worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe more satisfying. Who knows?
To be continued, this is the first time in since Star Trek came back on the air in 2017 with Discovery. There have been Part 1s and Part 2s, there have been cliffhangers. Not a single one of them has ever popped up on the screen to be continued. So this is the first time we've gotten a to be continued since the last two-parter in Enterprise. The second episode of which was Terra Prime, and the first episode of which was, someone can put in the chat, Demons, I think.
Demons,
yes. Also, the final 2 episodes of Enterprise, yes.
Those are the final 2, right. No, that's it. Those are the finale. That's the finale, right.
Before there was an extra episode of The Next Generation created at the very end.
There was like a fan-written, there was like a headcanon for Riker. Like, it was his holodeck headcanon fanfic. right? We
Yeah.
all made that canon.
Yeah. So that was 2005. That was the last time we've seen a Star Trek episode end with the famous words "to be continued." Here's a question for you, though. They've gone so far as to throw up the TNG font "to be continued"?
Are they going to do the recap like they used to?
Last time on Star Trek Lower Decks.
Yeah,
Can anybody
hope so.
go out and find the voice clips of Majel Barrett and see if we can sling together a computer her as the computer saying "last time on Star Trek Lower Decks"?
That would blow my mind. Or someone who could do a really good impression of her.
Yeah,
I would be. blown
supposedly,
away.
the rumor is, I've never seen any evidence this is true, but the rumor is that shortly before her death, she did record her phonics, which is what they do for like your digital assistants, your Alexas and Siris and Echoes and stuff. So they, using the phonics, you can create any words you want to. But, I mean, it's sadly been quite a long time since she died. We've never seen any evidence that actually did happen, but that's the rumor. And if they do exist, you could do something like that. Yeah, right. Now would be the time.
I think I'd be fine with the voice of the Lower Decks computer to do it, as like the legacy carries on, more than just reusing Majel Barrett and putting something together to be last time on Star Trek Lower Decks.
That would be cool.
Yeah, we have actually a lot of talk in the chat about Rutherford's implant. So I guess we should also talk about
so
that.
much happened this episode. What is that about? Also, we haven't even theorized about how the planet might have gotten destroyed or who's behind that. There's so much in this episode. Holy crap.
So much.
Yeah. Like, what's up with the implant? That's obviously not Vulcan because they said that. So I know they didn't look Romulan. They said it looked like human. They had rounded ears, right?
Oh, as in the silhouettes of the people?
Yeah.
I don't think you could tell, but they didn't. I don't think you could really tell.
Okay, I would think it would be Romulans then. Like, that would be my next guess.
Kind of like a Geordie situation.
Kind of. But more of an intelligence collection because, like, this is before the supernova, right?
Yes.
So
supernovas for 6 more years.
And they're not like allies, but they also don't dislike each other at this point, correct? They're like
correct.
Like
like
I mean, as far as
warm dislike, like
as far as we know.
Like,
as far as we know in Alpha canon.
Right.
So they're not enemies, but they're not allies.
Right. Well, in the real world, for people we have like that in any country for the most part, but definitely in the U.S., like they're still gonna try and like collect information, gather information, even on, especially if it was like Tal Shiar, like they're gonna gather information even on their allies. So who's to say that this isn't like, and now we know about the Zhat Vash, so could this not be a tie-in with that? Maybe even, you know, like there's so many different layers they could do or tie into other shows. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping they do some kind of tie-in to one of the other shows that are, you know, set in the future. Not even like a direct reference to anything, just like something that might tie together some pieces that we don't have.
Definitely talking about that. I would definitely like it for, as we're going into the 2382 and other places, to tie into the backstory which was set up in Star Trek Picard. Because obviously we know that Admiral Picard is trying to be promoted to Admiral and go off and do his relocation effort. We have Beta Canon to support that, but it would be very nice to have some Alpha Canon and have some on-screen stuff being like, oh, did you hear that Picard got promoted to Admiral? And they're like, yeah, keep up the news. Something simple as that. And if they do tie in Rutherford's implants to that, that could be very interesting for the story going forward.
Yeah, and I'd be very comfortable with it being the Romulans. I'd be comfortable with it turning out to be anyone except Section 31.
And see, I was just about to say,
how boring would that be?
Yeah, I was just about to say the only one that I can think of that wouldn't be like, oh, that's interesting, I didn't necessarily see that coming, would be, oh, this is Section 31. It's a planet.
And I definitely
the reason why I think it could be Section 31, and hear me out, it's a little bit of a tangent. The last we know of Section 31 was with Sloane in DS9, correct? Like that was Section 31, quote unquote, died with him. So we don't know of the organization outside of Section 31. Obviously, there's no way that Section 31 died with him. Like, there's other agents out there. So in the sense that I could see them setting up to answer the question of, yes, the Section 31 is still existence. In fact, the fact that it was Starfleet security that came in, got the captain, could also, if it both happened in the same episode, be foreshadowing that it is somehow Section 31, and there's like this huge convoluted thing because they've also, I know I'm doing like some tin hat stuff, they've also
Marinate on the board.
I know, they've also referenced Section 31 several times in the show already without actually showing us anything Section 31. That's why I personally think that's probably what we're going to see. Whether or not it's what we want to see is a whole other story, but what that feels like they're setting up for, it feels like it's going to be Section 31 with everything they've set up for, and it would make sense for the show coming out, but I don't want it to be Section 31. I want it to be something different. That's my rant.
No, I don't.
To my TED Talk.
I don't think it does make sense in the fact that, and we won't stick on the Section 31 stuff too much because there's so much more fascinating stuff that we can talk about for our lovely chat. But just why would they do it to an ensign who has very little access to anything? And we already have seen that they have basically unlimited access to anything. They can appear on DS9 and no one knows where they are, no transporter signature. So why would they need to put an implant in an ensign?
Yeah.
That's my only thing for that. But I'd really like it if it was anyone else.
Yeah,
and
me too.
I really like Section 31.
I do too. I'm a huge Section
this is their
fan.
style.
Yeah.
Here's why I think it won't be. It's too obvious.
Yeah. That's
Right,
why
like-
I hope it's not, because like if I could just do that little pinboard thing right there in like 30 seconds, then obviously there's a bunch of other people out there who are like, oh, Section 31, Section 31.
And definitely when, the big bad so far of Lower Decks has been the Pack-Leds. Yeah, there was a thing on controlling them, but it was the Pack-Leds, something which going into the show no one could have anticipated.
Right.
Oh yeah, the Pack-Leds are going to be a big threat. I think it's going to be something like that, where it will be a either minuscule callback and you'll be like, oh, it's those people, or something like that. So yeah, I don't think it would be anything too obvious.
Yeah.
I think Mike McMahon's too smart.
I think
to
so
do
too.
something
I
so
agree.
obvious.
Yeah.
Because otherwise there's no mystery to it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
we're already expecting it to be Section 31. And so, you're now just going to play out a story in which you confirm our priors.
God, the real twist would be it's just regular sanctioned Starfleet.
Yeah,
like
right.
that would be a huge twist. Like, wait, whoa, hold on, why? What?
Yeah.
Just like regular
Romulans,
top board.
Cardassians,
Yeah.
Pack-Led surgically altered to look like humans, right? Like, give me anything
Yeah.
else. And I think Mike McMahon is plugged in enough to the discourse around the show to know that's where everybody's minds are immediately going to go to. And so I think he's going to ultimately subvert those expectations, and I encourage him to do so.
Yeah, Steele brings up a good point. What happened to Klingon Boimler? Like, did he go back to
as in
Kronos?
Muff.
And did he?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, did he ever get a
Muff.
chance to make it back, or did he get intercepted? Like, because if he got back, he could tell. Oh, thus obviously it wasn't this ship.
Well, the only thing about Freeman was the fact that she blew up the planet, not that she was in leagues with the
right, but I
Pack-Leds.
feel like if Klingon Boimler got back, he would have been like, I don't know about that one. Like, that doesn't really add up.
No, it is interesting when Starfleet Command did appear and they showed the evidence, and it was the officially sanctioned meeting that Freeman and Shax was there for. So hopefully there's more evidence than just, oh, we saw you on the planet, and then Freeman can just be like, yeah, because you sent me there for a mission. It's like, oh, okay, you're not arrested anymore. Good job. Because, Starfleet intelligence aren't the best at their jobs, from what we've seen in other shows.
Right.
I won't be surprised, but it won't be that.
Brie, I think the answer to your question is probably intentionally being held in reserve for whatever that third season premiere is. Because the other thing Mike McMahon has also talked about is how, for 209, the way it's constructed is that we, the audience, are privileged to this like big galaxy, politics sort of wide information, and the episode is structured in a way where we as the audience walk away with having the experience of feeling like we are in the middle of a TNG scale, redemption style episode, but the Cerritos itself isn't. They just stumble on across a pack-led ship, get into a fight, get bailed out by the Vulcans, and everybody continues on their own merry way. And so I think he's trying to do the same thing again, which is by the end of that first or second or third episode of season 3, whenever this plot line resolves, my guess is probably by the end of episode 1, that we as the audience will probably have gotten a better understanding of what has happened. And I think that partially that involves answering that question about what happened to the Chitaur after Captain Dirg was killed. But that maybe the Cerritos itself is still going to be, a bit of a bystander to whatever that outcome is. But it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. And hey, I love a good courtroom episode, right? Like they just brought back one season 2 guest star in the form of Sonia Gomez. How about bringing back old Philippa Louvois to be the judge for the tribunal?
That would be so cool.
That would be cool.
Yeah, I'm just geeking out from that idea. Jeez, why do you have to say that? Oh my god.
Ain't love grand?
Yeah, because there was the I think it was Collateral Damage, the recent TNG book with Louvois, in a courtroom with Picard. So I really enjoyed that book. So having more Louvois would be really great, and I now really want that for season 3. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
But yeah, was there anything else about this episode anyone wanted to talk about? I'll open it up.
Let's see. We could even open it to chat, because
so I'll bring something up before chat talks about. But what I really liked about this episode was the fact that the Excelsior, the Obena class, whatever it's pronounced, which is basically a refit Excelsior, got hit by a cloud of radiolytic isotopes or whatever they called it. But it was really nice because it kind of, in my mind, mirrors the fact that that's happened to a lot of Excelsior classes. You have the USS Excelsior being hit by the shockwave of Praxis, and then you had the Enterprise B being hit by the Nexus, the energy ribbon. So it's just continuing that tradition, and it's just a little thing. Whether it was intentional or not, who knows? It probably was, knowing them.
Yeah.
But it was just that really little thing that was just the cherry on the cake for this episode for me.
And I'm sure you've talked about this in previous episodes, but now we've gotten to the end of the season, we can sort of look back over season 2 and kind of revel in it. How much of a colossal step up was the animation this season compared to season 1? I mean, so good, just gorgeous. I mean, the Lapan system, all the stuff with the ships, the from previous episodes, just the depth of what you're looking at, it's just so good. I mean, I know we're all now super hyped up for Prodigy, and that just looks absolute next level in terms of its level of animation. But like Lower Decks, there's nothing to sniff at after this last season. I mean, they really upped their game between season 1 and 2, and the show has benefited from it tremendously.
And it'll definitely be interesting going into season 3 if anything got even more upgraded, because it's a possibility, and that's mind-blowing that it could look any better. It already looks great.
Looks, I was just about to say, it already looks so good.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Let's see. Who else?
Seeing both ships fly out of space dock, so good. Yes, what also was nice about that was it looks like back in the episode with the Paladronian, which was called Excretus, that's the name of the episode. The Excelsior, which is chasing the Cerritos out of space dock to save Spock and escape, go to the Genesis planet, looks to be the Obena class.
Yes.
And I just put that there because why would you just you have that asset, just use it. So we probably should have been able to predict that. Oh, maybe there's nice looking Excelsior coming our way. Yeah.
That would be really cool. I would really like that.
And obviously we've got, whether it was probably intentional foreshadowing with, like we said previously, with the model of the Cerritos and it being naked.
Yes.
So it definitely could have been a foreshadow for this episode.
I feel like Mike McMahon and just the showrunners and animators and creators are so good at foreshadowing in this, but in ways that, you know, you don't easily pick up until after it's already been obviously put in front of you.
Yeah, totally.
I really like that.
Yeah, so I think it will definitely reward. Like, I haven't done a season 2 full binge because now we can. The final episode's out. But I haven't done that yet, so it will be very interesting to binge it all and be like, ooh, okay, I picked that up. Because even after like 4 times rewatching this episode, I'm still picking out the smallest of details.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I know that Eagle Moss have already announced they're doing the Cerritos and the Titan,
Yes.
but like I want them all. Give me the Parliament class, give me the Obena class. Like you know, I'm ready. Like there is space. Well, there's no space on my shelves because they put out like 400 of these ships by now. But let's just say there is space in a storage box in my basement for the lower deck ships as well for me to rotate in and out of the displays.
I can't wait till they announce that. Obviously, we'll have to get through some of the other ships, such as in Discovery and such, so it may be a while. We may have to wait until we get a resolution to this finale before we can actually know about these ships. But it will be great to have some of them. Like I said, I really want, if they do a limited edition Naked Cerritos model, I will buy it. And I'm sure many other people will. It will be quite highly prized as a collector's item.
Yeah, overall, I really liked it. Someone asked if we prefer overall season 1 or 2, and I feel like, I was going to say, I feel like it's pretty unanimous that season 2 is far better in pretty much every way. It's really
I'd definitely say the last 3 episodes of season 1 as like a stretch of 3 episodes were really, really good. Yeah. Whereas I think for this episode, it was the last 2 episodes which reached, I would say higher, but reached that height. But overall, I thought the first couple of episodes were a little slow, but the same was the case for season 1. But they quickly got their steam and knew what they were doing and found such episodes as we have just watched. So, yeah, I definitely preferred season 2.
I mean, and there's no genuinely, in my opinion, there's no genuinely bad episodes in season 2. Right. Not really any genuinely bad episodes in season 1, but like my least favorite episodes of season 2 would be Strange Energies, the season premiere, just because I thought it was a bit boring. Right, but not like really boring, but just like a little bit boring, because you were coming off of such a high from that season finale, and it just felt like, oh, this feels more like an first half of season 1 episode than a second half of season 1 episode. And then, you know, certain jokes in Mugato Gumato, you know, I didn't love because it leaned a bit more into childish humor, and which I thought was an interesting experiment for Star Trek. But like, if that's the worst thing that I have to say about season 2 of Lower Decks, right? Like most Star Trek shows would be crying out for that level of criticism, for, you know, especially for their first and second seasons. Yeah,
and I think they just definitely knew what they were doing going into creating this show. They pitched it as, this is the show we want to make, rather than, oh, we just want to make a Star Trek show. It has a ship. We'll figure out what happened. But they were like, okay, we're doing the Lower Decks. We're doing this ship which isn't really seen, and it just does all the menial tasks, which we don't see any of the big ships do because they're too important to do that.
Right.
But yeah, someone had the question of, so does Ransom take over the Cerritos, or will the Admiral Freeman take over? So the question is, who do you think will become captain of the Cerritos, taking over from the disgraced Freeman?
You know what would be funny?
If they bring on someone new?
Well, I was thinking would be if they pull an end of Discovery season 1 of you have a new captain waiting for you on Vulcan, and you got to go pick him up, and they just never do. And then
I think it would be great if they do pick up the person, and he's like, "I've been here waiting for a ship for so long."
Or maybe, or they never pick him up, but then at the very end of an episode, there's just you just cut to, quick establishing shot of Vulcan, and then just a captain just kind of sitting there twiddling his thumbs, just waiting for somebody to show up in a ship.
See, I was thinking more along the lines of like what Ross said, with like more of a Jellicoe, where they get someone temporarily, like until things are sorted out, like a temporary captain, and then they can do a lot with that because then they've got a new character that they can play with.
Yeah, they could always have someone carrying a riding crop with them.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, I could definitely see them doing a Jellicoe play, right? Like in season 1, they had that. There was, I forget the name of the episode, where terminal provocations, where they had the like temporary captain who took over, but they didn't kind of play with it in that fun sort of Jellicoe style way, and so I think there's still an opening for them to do something like that, just bring in a real hard ass who insists that the ship must move to a 4-crew rotation, and then hilarity ensues from there.
Yeah. I'm really excited.
So it was really great seeing Admiral Freeman in person this episode, because we've always seen him on the view screen. And what was nice was he had a Kira class ship on his shelf, so him being the captain of a previous Akira class is pretty cool. Yeah.
There was a lot this episode. There's probably still stuff we missed.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I made some notes, but I'll check them. They mentioned the rubber ducky room, and now they have to. They have to reward us for knowing what the rubber ducky.
Yeah, what is the rubber ducky room?
So basically, on some on I think the MSD of the Enterprise D, there is a rubber duck in one of the rooms, and I think they kind of did play with that with the Hesperian ship having a dragon.
Yeah,
which I thought was a reference to that, but the fact that in this episode, Tendy's like, "Oh, we can go to somewhere secret, the rubber ducky room." What function does it serve on the ship? I need to know.
Yeah, that giant diagram of the ship on the back wall of the Enterprise D engineering, there are all these little in-jokes, one of which is the rubber ducky room. And what they would do is, most of the time, when you're filming in the rest of the engineering section, it's so far away that you can't make out that level of detail. When characters would get close to it, though, what they would normally do is just stick a bit of black tape over it so you couldn't see it. But in high definition, and a couple of shots that they just forgot to do that with, you do very clearly see that rubber duck right over, the shoulder of LaForge on deck 7 of the Enterprise. And so that was just what a hilarious, that it's a funny joke anyway, because it's just sort of absurdist humor, right? You don't have to know that on the Enterprise D, MSD, and the Next Generation, there's a rubber duck concealed, but if you know what that joke is, it's hilarious, because it shows a level of understanding and appreciation for the source material that the writers and producers have for this show, that we do, that everybody in the chat does, right? Like they're our people in a way that very few, there are lots of great Star Trek writers and there are lots of great Star Trek producers, but very few of them are cut from exactly the same cloth as we are, and it's always nice when one of us ends up in charge, at least for a little while.
Yeah. We have a question, which I think, depending on the time, we might end on, but who is your dream X-Trek cast member you'd like to see in the next season? So whether they are reprising their role, like Lucia Naff as Sonia Gomez, or as a brand new character. Like we have had many of veterans, like Jeffrey Combs in this season.
I'm happy to go first.
Yeah, go for it.
I don't care who it is, but they have to be a character from Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
Right, that is the show that is missing the love at the moment.
It is.
Right?
Where's my DS9 love?
Exactly. Voyager's getting its time in the sun. You know, we had Tom Paris this season. We got Janeway and Chakotay coming up in Prodigy.
TNG.
7 and 9's in Picard. TNG's having its revival. We got Picard, and it's got Q in it, and Riker and Troy, and Riker's and Troy in Lower Decks.
Yeah.
Where's my Deep Space Nine love? Right? Like, where is it? So I want one of those Deep Space Nine characters.
Garrick.
In the same way that like we always have Tom, Garrick,
Let's get Garrick back.
Bashir, or
or Garrick
I want
and
a Miles
Bashir.
O'Brien that speaks out loud, you know, like, or Kira Reese, or one of those Deep Space Nine characters.
Do it for Keiko.
Make an appearance.
Keiko needs to reappear.
Yeah.
Sure,
I mean,
100.
O'Brien had a one-off reference.
The better
but,
O'Brien.
Yeah, we had a one-off reference, but I think if we're going to bring back voice actors, I think it would be really nice for Garrick and Bashir to both come back, because both the actors have already done like the fan canon like line readings, and it was already pretty much all but canon. So why not make it actually canon, put it in the show, and have them just come in as like the old cute old couple.
The old couple.
Yeah, it's like, oh man, look what we're doing today.
That would be so good.
I would cry.
Also, just to see the reaction on Twitter, because you'd have some really ecstatic fans, and you'd have some really pissed off fans. And I want to see both of them. Yeah,
I'll probably take the day off on Twitter, after that happens. But yeah, I love that. Yeah, that'd be really cool.
That would be my dream. Both of them together.
Tim Jaron in chat says Molly in Starfleet.
Yes,
which would
be
be
cool.
pretty
Love
nice.
that. Hey, supposedly we got this Starfleet Academy show coming at some point, right?
They've been talking about that for 8 years almost. Like, it seems like it's been an ungodly amount of time.
A lot, yeah.
I mean, they've been talking about the possibility of a Starfleet Academy project going all the way back to 1989 when it was first floated as the prospect for Star Trek VI. Harve Bennett really wanted to do Star Trek VI as a Starfleet Academy movie. So like you could get some interesting characters there who could potentially make an appearance. And Molly would be a great one for that. Live in the father's footsteps.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But we are coming up to the hour.
Yes,
so...
we are.
Yeah.
So, Alex, where can people find you one more time in case they weren't here at the start?
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at Alexander T. Perry. You can also find my weekly Star Trek news podcast, Weekly Trek, at Weekly Trek. It's a 40-minute show every week in which we talk about the latest news of the week, and we do theories and speculation and try and come up with interesting angles on what might happen in the future of Star Trek. So if you're interested in all the news that will fit in about 40 minutes every week, then by all means, feel free to check us out. You can find us on any of your major podcast platforms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely nowadays when we're getting so much news.
Oh, yeah.
So,
speaking of news, I know this is probably going to be my last live stream with Trek Central. I can't say exactly what's going on yet, but I will talk about it when I'm allowed to. But in the meantime, this is probably the last live stream I'm going to do. I might come back and do guest stuff because I would love to do that. Like, I will literally always come back if you invite me. But as a host, this is my last time hosting, and I will post more updates.
You've done an excellent job at hosting.
I will post updates on my Twitter if you're curious to see what my next project or projects are. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I really like this. I love doing the live streams. And now Don's going to take over, and he's going to know the anxiety of stressing over the settings and stuff.
I may be taking over. Who knows? I'll let you know.
Yeah, we'll see. Someone's taking over. But outside of that, thank you all for stopping by to watch the live stream. Thank you again to Alex for being our wonderful guest today. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming out.
To everyone else,